Hi everyone! Good morning po sa ating lahat. Marami pong salamat sa pagpapaunlak po sa aming imbitasyon po to join us today in this webinar entitled Learner-Centered Pedagogy and Differentiated Instruction. So as educators po, we have been hearing about learner-centered pedagogy and about differentiated instruction. But today, Sir Ricky Magno will give light po sa ating mga questions about these topics. So this morning po, our project leader won't be able to join us, but she sent us her message, her welcome remarks. So let me read it. A pleasant morning to all our participants from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Welcome to the very first webinar we are offering this year. Last year, we are able to hold 15 webinars, and it was a huge success that decided us to continue with the same initiative this year. Though we are faced with a very challenging situation these days, given the high number of COVID cases recently, I believe it should not stop us from upgrading our capabilities. There are activities that we can do at the safety of our homes without risking ourselves outside. So today, we are having this webinar entitled Learner-Centered Pedagogy and Differentiated Instruction to be presented by our very competent resource person from the West Visayas State University, Dr. Ricky Magno. It is good to note that more than 500 participants expressed their interest in this webinar. Since there are limited slots only in Zoom, some participants may have access through Facebook Live. This webinar is brought to you by the Project Science Teacher Academy for the Regions, or STAR, of the Science Education Institute, Department of Science and Technology. We hope that you find this webinar valuable to you as an educator. We would like to inform you also that this webinar has been applied for CPD units at the PRC and is just waiting for the result of the evaluation. Rest assured that you will be updated on the status of this application. So stay tuned and may you have a productive session today. Once again, a warm welcome to all of you, our dear teachers. Stay safe and healthy. So that's the message of Ms. Cynthia Gaya po, our project leader in STAR. So we hope that let us all empty our cups para po mas marami po tayong matututunan sa webinar na ito. Let me share my screen to introduce our speaker for today. So for this webinar entitled Learner-Centered Pedagogy and Differentiated Instruction, we have Dr. Ricky Magno of West Visayas State University. He finished his bachelor's degree in education, major in general science from West Visayas State University, and his Master of Science in Teaching, major in chemistry, and Doctor of Philosophy in Science Education, also major in chemistry from De La Salle University. So for the trainings he conducted and attended, napakarami po nun. But ito po yung dalawang latest po na kinandak at inattendan ni Sir Ricky. First is the Philippine Flexible Learning Foundation's virtual conference last October 14 to November 18, 2020. And then the training of trainers on design thinking in K-3 science and mathematics teaching last year. So this is from Project STAR po. So he's been conducting trainings. He served as a speaker po in DepEd, in CHED, and of course in the OST-SEI. So for the awards, ito po yung mga awards that Sir Ricky got po. But the latest po ay yung Presidential Plaque of Merit in 2019 from West Visayas State University, and the Most Outstanding Teacher in 2019 also from West Visayas State University. So without further ado, Dr. Ricky Magno po is our speaker for today. He is the Faculty of College of Education of WIVSU and currently the Director of Center for International Linkages and Public Information. Also, he is our very own STAR trainer since 2016. So he's been our STAR trainer for 5 years na po sa Project STAR sa DOST-SEI. And he serves not just only as resource speaker sa mga trainings namin, but we also consult him sa project regarding sa Project STAR. So let us welcome po Dr. Ricky Magno. Sir Ricky, take it away po.
Thank you very much, April, for that kind introduction. Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to have met you virtually, although
Good
everyone is
morning, sir.
busy. Yeah, right now we are having this Holy Wednesday, despite the celebration, no? Despite the what do you call this? The moment that we're supposed to be doing some self introspection, you're still here with us attending this Project Star webinar. And with that, we are very thankful for your cooperation. And as earlier stated by April, we will be having this webinar on learner-centered pedagogy and differentiated instruction. Okay, so perhaps let's start this activity by, are you familiar with the so-called origami?
Yes,
You
sir.
see it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's have the first attempt. Our Okay, I'll just give the instruction orally. Since sige, it's already 9:40, but supposedly this is what we're going to do. On the first part of this, I will be giving you oral instructions. Oral instructions on coming up with a utility box. That is if you have the access there, maybe if you have paper or square paper, equal dimension, let's say 8 by 8 by 8, no? Or whatever piece of paper you have there, just get a square. Just get a square paper. Not rectangular, not round, but square, meaning all sides are equal. Okay, let's say for example, um, are you there? That's it. Ma'am Mona, that's correct. You have the technique there of coming up with a square paper.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, that's it, no? Okay, don't react, just react later. For now, I'll be giving you the instructions orally. Okay, once you have the square paper now, listen to the following instructions. First, no asking questions at this moment. Just follow the instructions. Sorry, I'll accommodate your questions later regarding the activity. Step 1, fold a blintz base. Fold a blintz base. B-L-I-N-T-Z base. Using your paper. Step number 2, you are going to open up the paper. After folding a blintz base, open up a paper. Then after that, fold in the four corners of your paper. Fold in the four corners of your paper. Then step number 4, once again, fold the four corners in. Fold the four corners in. And step number 5, flip paper over. Flip the paper over. Okay, are you following? Step number 6, this is what you're supposed to do. Rotate the paper slightly so that you see a square. Okay, rotate the paper slightly so that you will see a square. Now, fold both the top and the bottom halves to the center. Now, fold both the top and bottom halves to the center. Crease well and unfold. Next set. Fold both the right and left sides to meet the center. Fold both the right side and the left side to meet at the center. Step number 8. Now, bring the top flap over from the right to the left. Bring the top flap over from the right to the left. Step number 9. Fold the top and bottom right corners on the diagonal. Did you get it? Fold the top and bottom right corners on the diagonal. Step number 10. Bring both flaps over from the left to the right. Bring both flaps over from the left to the right. This time, step number 11, fold in the top. Fold in the top and bottom left corners on the diagonal. Fold in the top and bottom left corners on the diagonal. And step number 12, bring only the top flap over the right to the left. And last step, pry open the paper with your fingers. Let us see if you were able to get the instructions there. Were you able to get your origami box? Reactions? Reactions? For obvious reasons, some didn't make it, right? Who were able to make it? Ma'am Nona, you're halfway through. Who else? Any other? Okay. So that's it. Now, what is my purpose? What is my purpose actually? Oh, you're halfway through, Ma'am Mona. Okay, what I'm telling you actually are all verbal, or what I'm sharing or what I am instructing you are all oral directions to come up with your origami box. But you noticed majority or most of you had the difficulty, right? You were not able to get it. Let's try the second attempt. This time, you are going to have the instruction with this. Okay, let's try if you can make it. Again, with the same paper or another piece of paper, square at that, follow the following instructions. Oh, there. Fold the blends base. Okay. Step number 2, open up the paper. We go back again to the previous procedure. Okay, there. Step number 3, you do like this. Fold in the four corners following this. Step number 4 and step number 5. Okay. Your paper this time should look like this. If you are on this particular step, flip paper over, it would look like this. After that, we proceed to step 6. You rotate the paper slightly to the so that you see a square here. A square. Now fold both the top and the bottom halves to the center. Crease well. Okay, that's step number 6. And then we go to step number 7. You fold both the right, like this, and the left sides to meet at the center. Okay, look at this one. Folding it from the left and from the right to meet at the center. So the appearance of your paper would be like this now. That is, if you are on this particular step. After step 7, what will you do is, you bring the top flap over from the right to the left. So it would look like this. We go or we proceed to step number 9. Fold the top and bottom right corners on the diagonal, such as these two corners would look like the folded one, no? And step number 10, you bring both flaps over from the left to the right. Okay? Left to the right. And step 11, it would look somehow like this. We'll fold in the top and bottom left corners on the diagonal. And step 12, you bring the top flap over from the right to the left. Although it's quite, okay, I'm a bit fast with this. So step 13, here's the exciting part. You are now ready to pry open your origami box. Pry open, you stretch this portion so that the box would be formed like this. Okay? So if you follow the steps, what call this? You will come up with the origami box. This is just a simple origami box. Now, aside from the fact that I have asked you, actually, we had the following attempts. The first one was giving you the instructions orally. Step 2, or the second attempt, was giving instructions orally with written instructions. And third attempt is giving instructions orally with written instructions and visual aid. Okay. Which of these 3 attempts would you think will lead you to come up with your origami box? Which of these 3 attempts? Others may say 1, others, yes, 2, others are, yeah, telling it's 3. Okay. So you notice that in this activity alone, each one of you has a sort of preferred learning mode. Okay, you have a preferred learning mode. Therefore, that would lead us to our learners that they are also learning differently. Don't you think so? They are also learning differently. When I know for a fact that when I gave the instructions orally, there were some violent reactions among the participants. Right? Ay, ano man ang ginagawa ni Sir? He keeps on talking and talking. Yes, that's my purpose actually, to give you oral instructions so that you would be able to distinguish, no, which of this approach would suit you best in order for you to reach your or to meet your objective, that of coming with that origami box. Okay, so for today, we will be talking about learner-centered pedagogy and differentiated instruction. For today's objectives, we have the following: to identify one's learning style, describe the different learning style, identify characteristics of learner-centered pedagogy, discuss the effective roles of instructors or teachers to increase learning, and number 5, to discuss the basic principles of differentiated instruction. Are you familiar with differentiated instruction? I think it has been introduced already in the Department of Education. We will go into that later. We will be discussing some salient features of the differentiated instruction. And we will be able to identify activities suited to each component of DI, such as the content, the process, product, as well as environment. The environment that we're talking there is your learning environment. And I have another task. Second task, I think the DUST-SEI gave you the learning style inventory. Were you able to answer those? Yes. Okay, get a copy of the learning style inventory, accomplish the worksheets, and determine your score per learning area. So what does it say? Everyone, if you have a copy of your learning style inventory, There were 24 questions or statements which are answerable by often, sometimes, seldom. Are you done with that? Were you able to get your, what call this, learning styles inventory? Okay, how are you going to interpret your learning style inventory? Look at the following. There were 24 questions. There were 24 questions answerable by seldom, sometimes, often. Now, revisit those questions as well as your answers. If you answer number or if you answer seldom, give it a score of 1. Give it a score of 1. All answers, no, all seldom answers will be given a score of 1. Okay? All sometimes, if you answered sometimes, give it a point of 3. Then, if you answered often, give it a point of 5. Okay, that's it. And categorize the following, no? Look at numbers 2, 3, 7, 10, 14, 16, 19, and 22. Sum up your scores for these items. Sum up your scores for these items. 2, 3, 7, 10, 14, 16, 19, 22. Okay? Ma'am Mona, would you like to share your answer, your points for this category? You may use the chat box, Ma'am April or Sir LJ.
Yes po, sa atin pong participants, you may use the chat box.
Okay. Ma'am Mona, what is your, sample lang, just for an example, what is your total score for this category? Or anybody who could share?
Wait lang daw po, Sir Ricky. Sabi ni
Okay,
Ma'am
they are
Mona.
answering. Okay.
30 points from Ma'am Jovela. 30 points daw po, sir.
30. Example in this first category, 30. What about in these numbers? 1, 5, 8, 11, 13, 18, 21, and 24. What was his or her score?
From Ma'am Melody po, category 1 is 36, category 2 is 18, and category 3 is 20.
36. This one is?
18.
18.
And 20.
20. Okay. This is an example, no? What's your perfect score, by the way, per category? What's the perfect score per category? Because there are 8 questions. And the highest possible score for
5.
each item is 5. Therefore, 2, 4, 6, 8 times 5, highest for each category is 40. Okay? Now, granting you were able to obtain your individual scores there. 36, 18, 20 for Ma'am April. May I know the name please?
Ma'am Melody po.
Ma'am Melody got this scores. So what does it mean as far as the learning style inventory would tell us? Ma'am Melody, you are more of a visual learner because your highest score is 36. The first category actually is more of visual. So Ma'am Melody, your 36, your highest score is 36, so you are a visual learner. And since 18 and 20 are close to each other, so to a certain extent, no, you also have that characteristic of an auditory as well as kinesthetic learner. But generally, you are more of a visual learner. Is there anyone here who obtained a score whose highest score is the second category? Is there anyone who obtained the highest score for second category?
So far, sir, wala pa po sa mga nag-answer.
So karamihan,
First category.
first category. So I should say that most of you are really visuals. Therefore, it goes without saying that when I gave the instruction earlier, some of you were having different emotions, reactions. Medyo yung iba siguro galit sa akin dahil ang bilis ko magsalita, giving you the instructions orally, etc. Yes, I purposely did that so that I will be able to trigger your being a visual learner. So you see, that reaction alone is a manifestation that what I did is not suited to the kind of learning that you have, learning mode that you have, right? Are you getting the idea there now? Okay, so what are your characteristics if you are a visual learner? So please, anyone who is unique here, kinesthetic, anyone who obtained the highest score in the third category? Nobody?
Meron, sir, si Kim Daryl.
Wow, that's
Kim
good.
Daryl Gaka. Last
Oo.
category.
Only one?
So far, sir, sa mga nag-answer, only one po.
Oh, he's really a rare species. Okay, rare in the sense that only a few of them are really visual or kinesthetic. Okay, so while you are determining your learning style, allow me to share with you the characteristics of the three categories of learning style. The first one is the visual learners. If you are a visual learner, most of you belong, or most of us belong to this category because actually 65% of learners are visual. Do you agree? Do you agree? Most of us are visual really. So we cannot somehow process things or assimilate things if we are not seeing it. If things are just given to us, medyo there's a processing that we need to do. Like in the giving of instructions earlier, no? When I gave it orally, some of you didn't make it, or some of you just stopped because the kind of modality does not suit the kind of style or learning style that you have. Okay, that's good. That's very understandable, no? Okay, if you are a visual learner, you usually write information, notes, diagrams, and pictures. These are the kind of learners who are fond of taking notes. Okay? Now, in the DepEd, are we, what call this? Are we requiring everyone to take notes? Do all your students take notes? Have you noticed that there are some students who do not take down notes when you were giving lectures or discussions? Yes, because some of them are not maybe categorized under this group of learners. This group of learners like to read. They like to read oftentimes. And they observe rather than act or talk. They observe rather than act or talk. And they are very particular with details. They are very particular with details. They know how to distinguish errors in a certain writing probably, no? And they memorize by seeing graphics. In other words, they can easily associate things if they are seeing it. Okay? If they are seeing it. And they are meticulous and at the same time neat in appearance. Wow, neat in appearance because they pay particular attention to details. And lastly, they find verbal instructions difficult. Who among of you encounter difficulty when I gave the instruction orally? Yes, I agree, Mamona. True, because if you are a visual learner, you would really what call that, encounter difficulty if instructions will be given verbally. So correct ako doon, right? And I succeeded in getting your emotion, no, your reactions, because most of you had that reactions. Okay, kung ano-ano na yata ang nasabi. Anyway, that's typical of a visual learner. Now, you, if you are the course facilitator or the teacher, knowing that your learners are visual, what will you do then? Here are some study tips. No? Here are some study tips. No? Is a visual learner should take notes even when you've been given handouts or printed course notes, isn't it? Even if they have the module, even if they have their module, they have notations. They have notations or they have notebooks. And there are some learners, despite the fact that they have books, they are still writing it in their notebooks. They're doing that. What is the purpose? Because they are highlighting certain details of what they are learning. Okay? And look at, don't just listen to all study materials and directions. As I've said, they pay particular attention to details. And they use or make own charts. Yeah, they're making their own charts, maps, notes, flashcards, and practice visualizing or picturing words and concepts in their head. Have you seen some students who usually look at the ceiling of your classroom or maybe the wall? Yes, that's typical, because don't call their attention, because that's their way of thinking. That's their way of thinking. They are something like visualizing something is there. Okay? That's their way. Now, another study tip is for them to write everything down for frequent and quick visual reference. Who can relate with these characteristics and study tips? Okay? If you are a visual learner, these are the things, no, suggested tips to you. Okay, the second category, let's go to the auditory. Who are those auditory learners here, Ma'am April? Can you identify some based on their feedback, based on their learning style inventory?
Auditory. Sila po yung sa second category, no?
Yes po. Yes,
Si
April.
Ma'am Ses.
Okay, Ma'am Ses is an example of an auditory learner. Who else?
Ma'am Mona Lisa.
Ma'am Mona Lisa, okay. I have here some characteristics. You are free to agree or disagree with this. No? If some items are not true to you, well, you are free to disagree. Here are some characteristics of an auditory learner. Take note, they are the second most type of learner, 30%. For visual, it's 65. For auditory, it's roughly around 30%. They relate well or most effectively to the spoken words, okay, being auditory. And then they tend to listen to a lecture because you notice at this time, class, isn't it that most reactions here coming from our students, it's really very different if the teacher is giving us lecture or discussion. Do you agree? Rather than module. So some of the flexible learning activities that we have, modular, we have sometimes asynchronous and synchronous sessions. Okay, in tertiary education or higher education, we are having a combination of asynchronous and synchronous session. I think the synchronous session is well appreciated by the learners because it is the what do you call that, opportunity for them to clarify things that they cannot fully understand. Okay, and sometimes when they study, they talk to self aloud. When they are memorizing something, they murmur. Do you get? Because they enjoy talking. In short, these are the talkative group of learners. They are best in group interactions. In short, mga pabida sometimes, but their so-called pabida makes sense, no, relative to what is being required of them. They can be easily distracted though. Okay? They can be easily distracted. And they enjoy music, they hum, or they sing. And one way also for them to learn certain lessons or certain concepts, they hum, they create a certain pattern for them to memorize or for them to easily recall concepts. And they enjoy listening and likes to be read to. Okay, being auditory. And look at their characteristic. They are outgoing by nature. They are outgoing by nature. They are probably more into social interactions, no? And what are some tips for them, no? If you are the course facilitator and they are your students, you have these auditory learners, and you, for example, as auditory learner, what are some things that you should recall or should uh, note down here? For study tips, read your assignments and study materials aloud, even if you feel a little silly at first, or use tapes. Yes, I know some people, you notice they are recording lectures. They are recording lectures. Those are the kind of auditory learners. Okay, one best example of this is Leia Salonga. She's a type of auditory learner. She usually asks for recording of lectures because as a celebrity, she's busy with other engagements. So while she shared this, while she was doing some engagements, no, as a celebrity, she is also enrolled. She was also enrolled in I think in one of the schools there, and she would usually ask for lectures, tape lectures, for her to be able to catch up with the lesson. Because as they say, tape lectures may help fill in the gaps in your own notes. In the absence of your notes, no, because that is not your type, that is not your cup of tea, you prefer to listen to recorded lectures. Then they usually sit at the front of the classroom where they can hear the teacher giving the discussion or the lecture. That is the type of learner. Now, let's go to the very rare type of learners. These are the so-called kinesthetic. I think Ma'am April mentioned somebody earlier.
Yes, sir. Hindi
Okay.
ko na po matandaan kung sino siya sa
But
dami po ng chat.
sir, if you are this person, okay, you are the tactile or kinesthetic learners. You are a rare member of this group because kinesthetic learners are only around 5%. So we are dominated by 65% visual learners. Okay. They like to touch people when talking. Have you encountered people like this? Have you encountered people? Aside from talking, no, may mga meron pang mga additional gestures. Okay, but be careful what you are touching because you know nowadays we are very particular with certain laws, no? Then they are also outgoing by nature, similar to the auditory. They tap usually pencil or their foot when they are studying, and sometimes as course facilitators we get their attention also, no, that please stop doing that, please stop tapping your pencil because you destroy you disturb others. But that's their way of learning because they are after for that particular action in order for them to what call this easily recall certain concepts. The sad thing though, kinesthetic learners are poor spellers. They are poor spellers. Why? Because they do not pay particular attention to details, unlike the visual. The visual learners are really more into the details. And they dress for comfort. Okay? They prefer a hands-on approach learning through touch and movement. And most of the time, they are in motion most of the time and tries new things. Okay, perhaps you have encountered some of these learners in your respective classrooms. And what do you usually do? How do you deal with this type of learners? Do you scold them immediately? Do you what call this? Force them to behave, to stay calm, etc., etc.? If you are the course facilitator and if you are ready, probably the best thing for you to do is to give that learner a certain task where he could make use of his energy, to channel his energy in the accomplishment of that particular task. Okay, so I think by this time you now have a realization on what type of learner you are, either visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. Now I have here some questions to process, no? Well, first thing is, how did you find the two activities? You may use the chat box there. Real, can we have some reactions, please?
Wala pa pong sagot, Sir Ricky.
For those, no, just, how did you find the two activities? The first one is the origami or the box making, and the second is the learning style inventory. Learning style inventory. For one, in the origami box making, which did you prefer? The first attempt, the second attempt, or the third attempt? Now, whether you prefer the first, the second, or the third, it has something to do with your learning style. Okay? And you know also for question number 3, what did you discover about your learning style as revealed by the learning style inventory? Majority are?
Majority, sir, ay sa third attempt because sabi niya, I prefer third attempt. Sa inventory po, I am a visual learner. So sabi po
Okay.
yun ni Sir Robert.
I thank you for that, Sir Robert. So third attempt, no, because you are seeing the direction, you are hearing it, and at the same time, you are doing it on your own there with a visual aid. So most likely, there is a greater chance for you to succeed, to come up with your own origami box. Okay, that's good. So that's your realization. And for the learning style inventory, you have realized that you are also a visual learner. Now, what does it tell you about, or what does it tell about you as a learner and as a teacher? Your
Meron po dito,
preference, you know for a fact that you are a visual learner. You are a visual learner. Or you are an auditory learner. Or you are a kinesthetic learner. So what will you do now as a teacher? What will you do now as a teacher? Will your activities be focused on visual activities because you yourself is a visual learner?
may comment po sa chat box, Sir Ricky.
Sige, can you share, Pril?
As teachers, we need to consider the learning styles of our students from Ma'am Carmela. And then from Sir Mario James, it tells what approach will I present in the class. Our class is diverse.
Yes, that's it. No, because you yourself, you are aware of what kind of learner you are. So what works best for you? But look at your learners in a different perspective, coming from different perspectives or different contexts, no? You know that your learners are not all auditory. So don't keep on giving lectures. Don't keep on what call this? Having class discussion. Don't discuss. Every day of the week na lang, no? Please explore other activities that would address the learning style or needs of our learners. So in other words, we vary our approach. We vary our presentation in such a way that we will cater to the different needs of our learners. So meaning we address them individually. Okay. So what insights did you gain from the activities?
Must provide differentiated activities.
Okay, that's one.
I
Differentiated
realize
activities, that's good.
I realized that just like students, teachers also have their own learning styles.
Yes, exactly. Because we were once what? Students, no? We were students before. So we know what works best for us. Therefore, put yourselves now on the part of your learners. If you are on their shoes, what would you want or what would you be needing in order for you to learn the subject or in order for you to learn something? So you or we as course facilitators, we are there to complement what they need, okay, in order to address the learning competencies as well as the needs of our learners. Okay, thank you. Now, that gives us now a reason that our approach to teaching should be learner centered, okay, or the so-called learner centered pedagogy. Okay, this type of pedagogy describes a concept and a practice in which students and teachers learn from one another. Take note, learn from one another. The knowledge does not come from the teacher alone. Remember, it's a give and take. More so if you are dealing with the tertiary or higher education students. uh, I'm teaching nursing and education students, and sometimes they are also teaching me on things, especially on the use of technology. Because as we all know, we are not digital natives. We belong to the what do you call that? The 80s or 90s or 70s, 80s. But the new generation that we have now is the Generation Z. They are more adept in using some of this technology. So it's a give and take process. So in a learner-centered pedagogy, both teachers and students learn from each other. And this type of pedagogy proposes a global shift away from instruction that is fundamentally teacher-centered, at times termed as sage on the stage. Do you recall that? Sage, gone are the days that the teachers are considered sage on the stage, but rather it's a guide at the side. Okay, we are now guides. We are there to become facilitators. Okay, and this type of pedagogy grows out of curricular decisions and in class strategies, which encourage students, okay, highlighting students' interaction with content. Students' interaction with the content, with one another, and the teacher, and with the learning process. So there is what you call a dynamic interaction among the stake or among the teachers, no, or rather between the students and the teachers, plus of course factoring in the content and the processes or the learning process. And also this type of pedagogy encourages students reflection, dialogue, engagement, and requires a reliable assessment of their content mastery. Okay, that is the learner-centered pedagogy. I have here a comparison in the next slides. I will be showing you comparison of a teacher-centered and a learner-centered approach. Take a look at this. This was taken from Huba and Fried in 2000. Okay. The teacher-centered paradigm, knowledge is transmitted from professor or from teachers to students. Isn't it? In a teacher-centered paradigm, the teachers are viewed as knowledge dispenser. Knowledge dispenser, it's like your water dispenser. You get that water from that dispenser. So you view teacher as knowledge dispenser in a teacher-centered pedagogy or paradigm. In a learner-centered, students construct knowledge through gathering and synthesizing information and integrating it with the general skills of inquiry, communication, critical thinking, problem solving, and so on. The very items, these items are are seen in our what do you call this, curriculum, no? Particularly in our basic education curriculum. And in the as far as DOST is concerned, remember, they're doing their task also to develop the inquiry skills of our teachers by conducting a series of trainings, as well as developing critical thinking skills. So in here, in the development of critical thinking skills, we we prepared design thinking seminar for our K to 3 teachers also, and most especially problem solving. Okay, the problem nowadays is main problem. Some of our students, when they encounter problem, they do not know how to face the problem. They would usually retreat, no? They would usually retreat because probably their problem solving skills are not that well defined or well developed. So the reason why we have sad cases of students committing suicide, etc., etc. Another item here, when you say emphasis is on acquisition of knowledge, that is typically a teacher-centered approach. Okay? Acquisition of knowledge outside the context in which it will be used. But if it is learner-centered, the focus is the emphasis on using and communicating knowledge effectively to address enduring and emerging issues and problems in real-life contexts. Okay. This is the one that I would like to highlight. Addressing real-life contexts or problems. So if that is the case, you notice, no, that sometimes there are some parents or some of the some learners themselves are asking, where would I apply this kind of learning in real life? Like for example, they encounter in certain problem in certain subjects. No, they would usually ask, where would I apply this? Where could I possibly apply? Okay, probably the approach was not given in the teacher-centered. It was not fully realized by the students, the application of what the teacher was giving them. Okay, that is a teacher-centered paradigm. Then we have another items here. Now, students possibly receive information, while the teacher is the giver. At the same time, the student is the receiver. No, that's one-way traffic. Teacher gives, students receives. But in a teacher or in a learner-centered paradigm, students are actively involved. In other words, there is a two-way traffic here. Two-way traffic in the sense that the give and take happens between the teacher and the students. In a teacher-centered paradigm, the role of the teacher is to be the primary information giver and primary evaluator. But in the learner-centered, the teacher's role is to coach and facilitate. Teachers and students evaluate learning together. Okay. Because in here, in a learner-centered pedagogy, we don't only view assessment at the end, no? But we also integrate assessment before, during, and after. So that makes it more engaging because teachers and students are involved. That is typical of a learner-centered pedagogy or paradigm. In here, teaching and assessing are separate. But in the learner-centered, teaching and assessing are intertwined. As I was telling you earlier, we use assessment tools before, during, and after. Okay. And assessment in the teacher-centered is used to monitor learning. Monitor learning. And to monitor learning, we usually have the end point. Okay? In the case of summative test. But in a learner-centered pedagogy, assessment is used to promote and diagnose learning. That is why How many of you are still doing diagnostic exam or diagnostic test? How many of you are still doing diagnostic exam? I think this is a must, no? Diagnostic exam is a form of formative assessment. Okay? It's a form of and this is never recorded for grading purposes. Diagnostic exams are never recorded for grade purposes. It is the summative or a certain part of the formative assessment. Okay? And we have here, the emphasis is usually on the right answers, typical of teacher-centered. While in a learner-centered paradigm, emphasis is on generating better questions and learning. Okay, learning from errors. Okay? Like for example, in my laboratory activity, I don't usually give a 0 point in my what call that lab exams or lab report. Why? Because because if students will be able to justify their errors, that is a kind of learning. That is another learning, meaning they were able to identify what caused the error along the way. Okay? So in that case, you should not only focus on the right answer, but focus also on how the students were able to come up with an answer and the reasoning why they were able to get that answer. Perhaps along the way, they have miscalculated a certain reagent. That's why it gave a undesirable result. So that is also a kind of learning that they realized that something went wrong while they were doing the experiment. Okay? Another set. In a teacher-centered paradigm, desired learning is assessed indirectly through the use of objective scored tests. Whereas in a learner-centered, it is assessed directly through papers, projects, performance, portfolios, and the like. So you what call make use of other tools for assessing learning during, sorry, before, during, and after. Next, in a teacher-centered, it focuses on a single discipline. While in a learner-centered pedagogy, the approach is compatible with interdisciplinary investigation. We also conducted interdisciplinary contextualization, no? Project STAR. From Luzon to Mindanao, we also conducted the interdisciplinary contextualization to give to give equal opportunities for other disciplines to be integrated in the main discipline being taught. So it is not only an exclusive discipline. It does not, gone are the days when you say math, you focus only on math. No, it's not. You find application of the concept of math and other disciplines. Okay, next, culture is competitive and individualistic in a teacher-centered pedagogy. But in here, in a learner-centered, there is what you call a degree of cooperative, collaboration, cooperativeness among the learners and teachers. No, it's more collaborative, more interactive, more supportive. That is typical of a learner-centered paradigm or pedagogy. And the teacher, only students are viewed as learners. Okay, only students are viewed as learners. But in the learner-centered pedagogy, both the instructor, teachers, or professors, whatever you call it, as well, and the students or learners, they learn together. It's a collaborative effort to learn also, meaning both parties are involved in the learning process. Okay, then we go to the different characteristics. Characteristics of learner-centered pedagogy. We have this, they engages students in the hard, messy work of learning, encourages collaboration, motivates students by giving them some control over learning processes, encourages students to reflect on what they are learning and how they are learning it. The essence of our so-called assessment for learning, assessment assessment, what do you call that? In, for, and of. Okay, assessment of learning, assessment for learning. Okay, and then it includes explicit skill instruction also. That's typical of our learner-centered pedagogy. Remember, colleagues, no, that when we are entrusted these learners, do you view them as a single entity? Just a question. Do you view them as a single entity? Meaning, when they enter your classroom, do you view them immediately as having the same entry points? Real? May we hear some reactions? Do you view
Wala pa
them?
po, Sir Ricky.
Do you view your learners collectively? I mean, as a whole or in general? Meaning, you are handling this particular group of learners. Then you have that impression already that all of them are the same. In basic education, for example,
From
you're
Ma'am,
handling the first year or grade 7 for junior high school. The entry point, no, grade 7. And in the senior high school, grade 11. Say, for example, in these two entry points, grade 7 and grade 11, when you receive the learners in your respective classes, do you view them as a whole? I mean, in general, something like common, or they have common characteristics?
so Sir Ricky, ang dami pong sumagot ng no.
Yes, correct.
No, because they are diverse learners.
Exactly. That's my point, no? They are diverse. Remember when they come to your class, look at that. When they come to your class, they're coming from different educational experiences. Like, for example, you receive this grade 7 students. They graduated from different elementary schools. In the same manner, when you receive students in the senior high school, particularly grade 11, they were coming from different junior high schools. So they come from different educational experiences. In short, they have different prior educational experiences. In the same manner, they have different learning styles. You cannot generally conclude that all of them are auditory. You cannot say that according to the research, most of the learners are what do you call this? Visual. Therefore, all of them are visual. It doesn't say so. In other words, there are still peculiarity despite that no, they are all grade 7 or grade 11. They're coming from different prior experiences, and they are having different learning styles, and more so, they are having different interests. They're having different interests. Personal experiences. Personal experiences, I should say, is one of the factors that would affect also the performance of your learners. And also this readiness level. This readiness level. I think we are all teachers here, therefore we understand what is meant by readiness level. So in other words, if we are receiving students in our class and you have found out that a certain number of students are not ready for that particular task, what do you do? Would you simply go on, or what option would you take in order to address the readiness of those students? What would you do, perhaps? You can use the chat box.
Discuss again from Sir Kenneth.
Okay.
Bridge the gap from Sir Noel.
Okay, bridging the gap. Yes. What else? Okay, so in other words, now just like, for example, if you find in math, for example, there are prerequisite skills, and you found out that some of these learners have not yet mastered the prerequisite skills, what will you do? Will you just simply allow the students to advance? In doing so, you know for a fact that they are already at risk of not mastering it because the prerequisite skills were not mastered yet. Therefore, as a facilitator of learning, you do something. Probably you can identify the students and give them exercises for them to master the skills first before exposing them to a higher skill, no? Because for sure they will not be able to make it. And also they come from different they are having different motivators, no, or motivation in that aspect. Okay, when they enter your class, you don't even know how many of your students have taken their breakfast. How many of them have what call this? Satisfy their basic needs at that particular day, no? So things like that. Because I should say, like, I have a very interesting picture here. You should say that, say for example, you are the teacher here, and these are your students. These are your students. What can you see in the picture? You have a monkey. Can you see a monkey there? An elephant, a penguin, a fish, is this a dog, seal, and a bird. Okay, view them as your students. View them as your students, which is typical of our classroom. Oh, it says here, unfortunately, some classroom structures do not address this student diversity. Why? Say, for example, in our, you test them. For fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. And the exam is climb that tree. What will be your reaction? Because you view them as a whole, as an entire class, having the same characteristics and peculiarities. And you gave an exam, which in that case, the exam is for them to climb the tree. You as teacher, do you think you are fair enough? Are you fair enough? Definitely not, because you know for a fact that the elephant could hardly climb. The birds, maybe they can fly. More so with the fish, because it is an aquatic animal. Okay, which one would probably accomplish the task? Most likely it is the monkey. And I would like to quote Howard Gardner, the advocate of multiple intelligences. The biggest mistake of past centuries in teaching has been to treat all children as if they were variants of the same individual, and thus to feel justified in teaching them all the same subjects in the same way. In other words, we have not differentiated our approach to different types of learners. Okay? We have not differentiated our approach. Therefore, there is a need for us to address each learner individually. Let us review on what we are doing in our classroom. Instructional strategies typically used in the classrooms and how they affect students' memory and retention rates. For lecture, they will only be getting 5%. They will recall 5%. Memory retention. Reading, it's 10%. Audio visuals, 20%. Demonstration, 30%. Discussion, 50%. Practice by doing. This is hands-on, minds-on, 75%. But if you will give them the opportunity to teach one another, which is very typical of a learner-centered pedagogy wherein they get to exchange views, they get to exchange ideas by asking them to teach one another or immediate use of learning or application, then you get the retention there is very high, which is at 95%. That's according to Silverman 1996. Okay? So, where are we at this moment? Are we still on the first two? Are we still on the lecture and the reading? Have we explored other strategies like this? I'm sure, I'm very sure of the fact that our colleagues are doing also the hands-on, minds-on, and giving our students the opportunity to teach one another. Okay? Ang teach one another, or I could also include this peer tutoring. I think there are studies that claim that peer tutoring is also an effective way of letting the students learn more or to have a higher retention rate. Okay. Therefore, the question is, you have a classroom of a diverse learners and you know that some of our past teaching strategies are not going to be effective with them. The question is, how do we meet the needs of the diverse learners in our classroom? What do we do then? Okay, can anyone give me his or her idea? What can we do now? Having identified that we have a diverse learners, having a diverse learners in our class. So the best thing for us to do is,
There are comments here, Sir Ricky. Sabi nung
yes, please
isa,
share.
we should pay attention to our students' background and capabilities and give them different learning activities.
Okay,
And
give them
then,
different learning activities. Noted, that's good.
I am always looking forward to use that 75%, but I encounter so many difficulties due to availability of the materials.
Okay.
And then, differentiated task, give
Mm,
varied activities. So, yun po
okay.
yung summary ng mga
Answer.
comments.
Yes, I agree with your comments and suggestions. Yes, in order to address this question, there is a need for us to differentiate our approach. Are you familiar with the saying, different folks, different strokes? Different folks, different strokes. This particular approach may not be applicable to that person. So something must be used different, or some a different approach must be used. Okay, I am still a believer of that. No, different folks, different strokes. So there is a need for us to differentiate our instruction, and in differentiating, we have this is a typical representation. No, differentiating in terms of the style, considering the type of learners that we have, either they are visual, oral, auditory, or verbal. So you have some approaches here. Okay, tactile or kinesthetic. Okay, then what should we do now? Differentiate our approach. And what is differentiated instruction? Okay, we have here some descriptions. The differentiated instruction is a process through which teachers enhance learning by matching students' characteristics to instruction and assessment. Wow, this is a very, what call that? Um, Comprehensive, everything is there already. Enhanced learning, that is our target. Why do we teach? Because we want to enhance learning. How do we do it? We should match the characteristics of our students to our instruction and to our assessment technique. Now, if you are doing the same instruction all throughout the year, you say, you claim, I have been doing this, I've been in the field for almost 30 years, and I say this is effective. Well, to a certain extent, yes, there is that degree of efficacy also. But what if you explore other instructional approaches? You know for a fact that it is effective. Probably it could enhance the learning further if we will try to explore other approaches. Okay, so effective instruction that is responsive to learning preferences, interests, readiness of the individual learners. So we pay attention to the readiness of individual learners. We will not force them to learn calculus if they have not yet, what call this, taken the pre-cal, no, something like that. May mga, in order to fully to have a good grasp of the subject calculus, I think in the tertiary you need to have mga what subject is this? The differential equation, etc., or in algebra, something like that. Okay. So this differentiated instruction actually was made popular by Carroll and Tomlinson in 1999. Differentiation, according to her, is an organized yet flexible way of proactive adjusting teaching and learning to meet kids where they are and help them to achieve maximum growth as learners. She is the advocate of this. In other words, she is the proponent of the so-called differentiated instruction. Just a bit of history. 1985, it is called differentiated education for gifted and talented, coined by Verhel Ward of the University of Virginia. And in 1995, it in 1995, Carol Ann Tomlinson of University of Virginia coined the term differentiated instruction, and she popularized it further. Okay? But of course, this kind of approach has some theoretical basis. We cannot just simply, there are some notable educators ahead of us, ahead of them. So they pay attention also to the contribution of other educators, the like of Liv Simayonovich Vygotsky, I think. If you have learned from your Prof Ed courses, you have encountered the term Vygotsky. He is very popular in his social development theory, the zone of proximal development, and scaffolding. And Peter Honey and Alan Mumford, learning styles, the one that you did earlier. And Jerome Bruner on interest and organization of learning. And also Howard Gardner, the multiple intelligences. These are the basis, theoretical basis of differentiated instruction. Okay? I have here some terms related to differentiated instruction. These are descriptions. When you say DI, it means flexible, short-term groupings that allow students to work with a variety of peers with the same or different strengths and interests. Okay? It does not mean labeling students or grouping by ability. Okay, please do away with that labeling. Okay? Do away with that labeling. We are here determining or categorizing the strengths and interests as an entry point of our students. Okay? Then engaging and interesting tasks. They address the same skills for all learning preferences, interests, and learner levels of readiness. DI does not mean confining some students to low-level, repetitive, or rote tasks while others engage in higher-order thinking skills. It's not the intention of DI. We ask the students to have some, as what was contributed by some of you here earlier, on bridging the gap. That's a kind of approach in order to address the readiness of the learner. You bridge the gap in order for that learner to be ready to the next higher task. Okay. And DI means a reasonable number of well-constructed choices that address identify needs, strengths of students, while DI does not mean unlimited freedom for a student to choose whatever they would like to do on any day. No, it does not say so. Okay? The question is this: when we differentiate, we know the learner, check their readiness, check their interest, and their preferences in order for us to be able to enhance their learning. Okay? We respond, therefore, by differentiating. What are we supposed to differentiate here? The one in question mark. What should we place there? Now, let us recall your learning process. What are the things that we usually do? What are the things that we usually do? As a teacher, do we do lectures? Do we do discussions? Do we do classroom activities? Yes. What else? Do we pay attention also to our classroom? Diba? In the basic education, we have homeroom advising, pagandahan ng classroom. Does it matter if the room is okay or not? Yes, no? Because learning environment is another factor that would determine the quality or the efficacy of learning. In other words, we see to it that our rooms are conducive for learning. Okay. And because of this question, Carol Tomlinson was able to formulate a framework of differentiated instruction. This, according to her, must be differentiated. This, according to Tomlinson, the topic, which is the entry point or the content, does it mean you are going to have different topics for each? No. What is meant by Tomlinson here is the entry point must be suited to the characteristics or readiness of your learners without sacrificing or jeopardizing the learning competencies. Okay, another item that need to be differentiated according to her, helping students to learn. That is now the process. We can differentiate also our process or our approaches to our students. And we also need to differentiate our product, what we view at the end as our product, helping students demonstrate the learning competencies. Remember, we are all guided by these learning competencies. I think the DepEd for this pandemic, they have identified the so-called minimum learning competencies that need to be addressed. No? And also, we need to differentiate conditions for learners. What are these conditions for learners? This is more on the physical aspect, which is the environment or your learning environment or our individual classrooms. Okay, then we also need to have this instruction. To differentiate, we need to focus on our instructional strategies as well as how are we going to structure our own differentiated instruction in order to have meaningful or in order to attain our desired learning competencies. Okay, that's according to Tomlinson. So we need to differentiate all this. It's quite long, yes, but we have to. Okay, so we have here the features of DI, flexible learning groups. According to choice, it doesn't mean choice of the students, but choice pertaining to the readiness. What choice is suited for that type of learner? And shared responsibility for learning as well as respectful tasks. We also pay attention to the authenticity of the task being given to our learners relative to our instruction. And why do we need to differentiate? We need to differentiate in order to help students learn, increase student motivation and achievement, connect with adolescent learners. Okay, remember, if you are matured enough, I mean, you are in your, we are rather in our 50s or yeah, beyond 50s, sometimes we have the difficulty understanding the culture of the adolescent, right? Oh, sometimes we need to connect with them. Sometimes we need to relate to them, with them rather, in order for us to have a better understanding of why are they doing this or why are they behaving this way. And we are there also, we differentiate in order to help adolescents become, IND means independent learners, for them to become independent learners and will be able to increase teacher satisfaction and efficacy. Okay, teacher satisfaction and efficacy. Isn't it that you will be happy if all your learners or your students pass in your subjects? Right? That is a fulfillment, sort of a fulfillment. Because if you fail, if you fail some students, you need to reflect also. You need to reflect what went wrong along the way. Have I done something? Have I done everything as course facilitator? Did I do some, what you call this, corrective or preventive interventions in order for the students not to fail? So you or we as teachers, we know we need to consider all those. Okay, so here is a diagram that would show how differentiation may be done. You can differentiate in terms of content, in terms of process, as well as product. Okay, this is accomplished through our own variety of instructional strategies. Okay, differentiation, respectful. I already mentioned this, the characteristics no, or features of DI. So teachers can differentiate through the process, content, product, and content. Then according to students, we can differentiate to check the readiness, their interests, their learning profile, and their environment. Okay, in their environment. So here, knowing the learner, we should know how well do you know your learners. You have your class list. Oh, check attendance. Do you know them well? No. You have to explore all other possibilities of understanding their context. Or check their readiness. How are their KSA, their knowledge, skills, and attitudes, their interests. You survey their interest. What are they most interested in? Okay, self-selection, that could be done by you also. Then learning profile. You can probably come up with a profile of your learners who are auditory, who are kinesthetic, who are visual, so that you will know, you have an idea why this kind of strategy does not work well for this particular learner, because you realize that the one that you use is not suited to the kind of learning preferences your learners have rather. Okay? And learning environment, still active, flexible. Is your environment quiet, noisy? Is it cool? Is it warm? You know, things like this, you have to pay attention as well. Are there many displays in the classroom? Are there few displays? Is the room small or big enough to accommodate the number of students that you have? So these are things that you need to differentiate as well. Okay. And then we go back to some, okay, here. This is an example of learner's profile. As I mentioned earlier, categorize your students. And here we go back to the diagram or the framework of Tomlinson, no? How to differentiate. Okay, responding by differentiating. Use appropriate or evidence-based strategies. Evidence-based strategies for instruction, assessment, and evaluation. Use structures or ways of organizing that facilitate student learning and provide choices. Provide choices or respect tasks, a shared responsibility for learning, and flexible learning groups, the key features of your differentiated instruction. Here are some, okay, I'll share with you from Marzano, Pickering, Pollack, 2001, research-based instructional strategies, which you can make use in differentiated instruction. Okay, identifying similarities and differences by the use of Venn diagram or metaphors. Then summarizing or note-taking, reciprocal teaching, outline webs rather, reinforcing effort and providing recognition. Oh, these are things, I think some of these are familiar to you. Non-linguistic representations like graphic organizers, physical maps, physical, kinesthetic models, etc. I have here highlighted, particularly in the field of the science, no? Science and math, generating and testing hypotheses. Okay, this is a type of approach also. In this case, sample strategies, if your intention is to generate and test hypotheses, you can make use of the following strategies of inquiry processes. 4A's, this is very popular among our friends in the DepEd. 5E and 7E models. No? You can have lab, problem solving, decision making. I think we have a separate training for this, which we already conducted to some schools nationwide. And lastly, questions, cues, and advanced organizers, and anticipation guides, exit cards, teaching vocabulary, or teaching thinking routines. Those are some examples of strategies that you can make use. Okay, here's what you can differentiate. You can differentiate the content, the process, the product, and the learning environment. Okay? These are the things that you can differentiate. You know your content. You know the process, how to do it. You know what you are expecting from your students. What are your desired learning objectives or desired learning competencies or learning environment in your classroom? What can you possibly do? Okay, so I have here some diagrams. Okay, ways to differentiate the content. Essential questions, reading comprehension. These are some of the approaches where you can make use, to differentiate your content. you may not be able to give all of this in one group. So probably in one group of students, you can have this activity, the other will have another one, but of course, working on the same competencies. Okay. Another is, okay, through process. Here, based on content, utilize the pre-test to assess whether individual students need to begin or study a given unit. Are we doing this pre-test? Are we doing that usually or not? I think there is a
Yes daw
need.
po, sir.
Yeah, I think there is a need because that's one way to determine the readiness of our students. If, for example, your pretest tell you that 10% of your students know the concept, so therefore, what will you do? Oh, there is a greater 90% that do not know. Student 90% of students do not know about this. All the more that you should enhance your presentation then, or your treatment of your or your approach rather. Okay, of course, when you do that, you also pay attention to the Bloom's taxonomy of learning objectives at the various level. What is the highest now? The revised. This is one way of Bloom student, his student were rather, who are those? Krathwal. Basta Bloom have students who revise the taxonomy. They interchange evaluate with create. Create now is the highest, followed by evaluate down to the other levels of taxonomy. Okay, then process. Here are some examples on ways to differentiate the process. Framing questions, learning logs, flexible grouping, anchor activities, learning contracts, and many others. So these are the things that you can possibly make use. Now we go to product. How the student is able to demonstrate what he or she knows, understands, and is able to do as a result of learning. This is our target. Target is the desired learning competencies. So that is our expected product. That's our expected product. So how do we differentiate? Okay, here. You can ask others to have to present a puppet show. You can have a video documentary. I tell you, the Generation Z are very good at this. Okay? And I was even impressed when I did this before. They were able to come up with a very good video documentary. So that's one way. In other words, what I'm trying to tell you here is, as far as the product is concerned, you tap their expertise. Where are they? Where do you think, in what activity they could do their best? So you consider this, no? Because that's one way of enhancing their skills. Of course, you might be in the logic that we need also to develop other skills. Yes, that's why you need to differentiate the product. If that is your intention, you can make use of other measure for your product. Okay, probably you can give a presentation. For those musical people, you can ask them to write song. You can ask them a photo essay. Okay, or they can develop games in order to attain your objective. Okay, so that's one way. Now the question is, how do you differentiate? How to start your DI? This is the first thing. Do a formative assessment. Formative assessment should include also your diagnostic. Okay? Diagnostic, because you want to know the entry point of your students. You want to know what are their skills. Okay? Then create an individual profile of your students in each class, categorizing them into learning style, and then in terms of skills also. And then using the results of the formative or diagnostic test, teachers can modify, this is the thing, Teachers can modify or differentiate the content, process, product along with the learning area. See, it covers the areas to be differentiated. We have the content, the process, product, and learning area. Do you think you can differentiate this four without knowing the entry point or the readiness of your students? I don't think so. So there is a need, or it is a must that you should do diagnostic profiling of your learners. That's the essence of differentiated instruction. Never attempt coming up with a DI or a differentiated instruction without knowing the entry point of your students. Okay? That's it, no? First step is formative, then do the differentiation. Okay, differentiating by tiering. When you say tier, you some kind of observe some kind of leveling, no, level. So probably you can tier the complexity. Some students learn about and create brochure to inform about environmental issues related to rainforest. That is more on the factual knowledge. So that is one way of differentiating the complexity. Or another one, you can have it this way. Others create brochure to inform different points of view about environmental issues related to rainforest. Okay, there goes the tiering by complexity. First, you ask one group to simply come up with a brochure on which is more on factual knowledge, and this one is more analytic. You can come up with a brochure engaging some readers to do some analysis of what they are reading. Okay, that's one way of tiering. And here, tiered assignments based on pre-assessment. You already conducted a pre-assessment. Therefore, you have this category. There are students who do not know the concept. There are students with some understanding. And there are students who understand the concept. So in doing so, you have already made a profile of your learners. So you can differentiate your approach for this. You may have a different approach for this group. Same is true with this group and this group. But colleagues, it doesn't mean different. It should always be anchored on the competencies that you are trying to measure. Okay, here, what can be tiered? I already explained this now. Content, process, and product. You can tier the materials, the assignments, assessments, learning stations, writing prompts, and other activities. You can have it differentiated. Okay, tiering, instruction. Identify the standards, concepts, and generalizations you want the students to learn. And what is our basis here? This is our curriculum guide. We should not jeopardize that because it is a state standard that is required by the Philippine state. So we have to focus on that. Then decide if students have the background necessary to be successful with the lesson. Then assess students' readiness, interests, and learning profiles. Same is true. The very essence of your differentiated instruction. Okay, here, creating a learning environment. We go to the last aspect, the learning environment to support differentiated instruction. Let us make sure that our learning environment, let's have this guide guide questions. Do I see, or is my classroom here? Do I see thoughtful use of space so that desks and tables can be quickly and easily grouped in various configurations? It is you who can answer that. Is your classroom welcoming, inviting, and engaging? That's one way. Is your classroom welcoming, inviting, and engaging? Okay. So what will you do if it is not inviting, it is not engaging? You do some revisions there. Okay? Probably we will start from ourselves. We teachers must be welcoming. No, when our students enter our classroom, we must see to it that we have that welcoming aura. Hindi yung hindi pa nakapasok yung mga students, yung mga kilay naka-cross na or what. Now, first thing first, we must have a welcoming classroom. Okay? Do I see spaces where people can sometimes work alone? And if they prefer, that is respecting individual choice, no? Or is my classroom a place where all learners have agreed upon ways of working and learning together? Things like this, you need to answer. In other words, you know what a conducive classroom is. So if there is a need to work by group, see to it that you can arrange your learning environment in such a way that it would allow different groups to work conducively. If there are times wherein you don't need to have a group activity, does it have an individual space where your students are comfortable doing their assigned task? So things like this, you have to answer it because you are the course facilitator and you know what a conducive classroom is. Okay? And lastly, here you have an spaces, visible and clear instructions for directions, appropriate use of technology. Are our approaches now technology infused? Or I believe in the depth ed, you have two modes, no? Either modular or online. I saw some students having that. Now, is your classroom a place where teacher attends over time to individuals, small groups, and the whole class, and is always aware of everyone in the room? This is a very, what you call that, typical of a course facilitator. If we are a course facilitator, we attend to individuals as well as groups and the entire class. No? Is it a place where students have choices in their learning? Is it a place where all learners respect and value individual differences? Okay, so that's it. Differentiating the so-called, elements under this framework. Differentiating instruction in terms of the topic, in terms of the content, no? In terms of the process, in terms of the product, and in terms of environment. Thus, if we do this, we are successful in our differentiated instruction. Okay? If you have some question, you can just possibly choose the chat box. And I would like to leave you with this quote: what is fair isn't always equal. Differentiation gets us away from one size fits all approach to curriculum and instruction that doesn't fit anyone. And also, 2 plus 2 equals 4, and so is 3 plus 1. Knowledge comes from many sources, and everyone learns differently. We have to respect other people's way of thinking. And the references are here. And thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for your participation.
Yes po, thank you Sir Ricky for that informative discussion and for making our teachers reflect po on their teaching practices. Ang ganda po na to be reminded na to be learner-centered and also what is differentiated in instruction and what is not. So kasi minsan, lalong-lalo na po ngayong pandemic, we are so busy with our different tasks as teachers and we tend to forget, we forget to consider that our learners are different individuals. So thank you for that, Sir Ricky. And if you have, let's proceed na po sa question and answer portion of this webinar. So if you have questions, you can unmute yourself. And if you are shy type naman, you can just use the chat box.
Yes, so, you can use the chat box.
So Sir Ricky, we have question po from the Facebook comment, Facebook Live.
Yes,
from
po.
Sir Erickson Jacob. Is there no such thing as visual or auditory learner or a combination of both?
Technically speaking, there are Okay, there are people who can combine such. However, there is one type that would prevail over the other.
Okay, thank you, Sir Ricky. Sir
Ma'am
Ricky,
April,
another...
can we have a copy of the PowerPoint? And there's a question I saw.
Yes po, yan po yung next question. Madami pa po kanina nagtatanong, sir, even sa Facebook, even just a PDF copy daw po.
Sure.
So yun. So
Sure. No
we will
problem.
just email. We will just email it to you.
I'll give this to Miss April, and Miss April will be the one to share this to all participants.
Yes po. And then next, sir, can we have a copy of the LSI interpretation?
Okay. Yes, yes, sure.
So we can use it with our students and fellow teachers. So yun po yung ano
Okay.
niya.
Sige. No problem.
Saan po isi-send ang activity? So later po, sir, sasagutin po natin yan during the evaluation. And then for the presentation po ni Sir Ricky, we will email it to you po. As long as please provide po yung correct na email address niya later sa Google Forms. May questions pa po? So we are looking at our Facebook Live. Wala naman po. And so, if wala na po, sure po tayo, wala nang questions. Oh, but later po kapag maybe nagre-reflect pa sila na Sir Ricky.
Sure, no problem.
So, later po siguro if we have questions, you can also email it to us. Yun pong ginamit po naming email address. And then we can forward it po to Sir Ricky. So later.
Thank you, Sir Mario James. Thank you very much.
Ito meron,
Yeah.
Sir Ricky, may question po from Facebook. What could be the considerations for elementary students for hands-on or experiment at home activities? From Sir Aaron Victoriano.
A consideration, hands-on activities.
Yes po, at home daw, for elementary students.
I see. Oh, but we have to be careful assigning because these are elementary pupils. Sometimes they might be too obedient to teachers, to the point that sometimes, remember, they might be doing something without the supervision of an adult. You have to be careful. Okay? Provision for them. Well, probably at this time, I do not know the approach in the basic education. If you allow the learners, particularly the elementary ones, do the activity without supervision. Because in the tertiary education, even the college students are not allowed to perform any lab activity without the supervision of the professor. So let us just be careful with what teachers are giving to the learners, particularly the elementary, because they are not yet. They are the high risk among the group of learners. Okay,
So
sir?
in addition, Sir Ricky, yung comment ni Sir Demetilo, we have suggested activities in the DepEd order.
Okay.
So yun po yung ano niya.
Sige, thank you, sir, for that additional information.
Another po, from Sir Robin Donquillo sa Facebook Live, is there an established tool to clearly define and identify specific learning styles of learners?
As of now, probably I'm using the learning style, as you have seen. But I think there are other researches that would truly determine or gauge the learning style of learner. This one is the reference that I used is that of Levin, no? But I think there are more recent instruments to determine the learning style of individuals or learners. Sige, sir, kindly refer to the latest version of the instrument.
Yes, sir. Sir, in addition to that, hindi ko lang maalala kung sino yung author, but that's my study po in college, the different learning styles. And yung inventory is sobrang mahaba siya. So, ayun.
Because this was 24, yeah.
From Sir Noel po, walang standardized pero marami sa internet. Meron din sa mga professional educational books from Lorimar. So, yun po. Sir Ricky, another question po from Facebook Live from Sir Jerry Tamayo. in online synchronous teaching, how does differentiated instruction effective to our learners?
Ay. Well, you know the limitations of synchronized what you call this? Synchronized session or a synchronized learning. However, you can still do so in a certain way. You know what? In our case, for example, in our case, we cannot accommodate all students because some of them have connectivity problems. So as course facilitator in a flexible learning, what we do usually is this. We are having modules. Then students are given the option to do to what you call this, to follow either asynchronous or synchronous session. And we still have this so-called chat groups. That's one way also of differentiating. No, that's an approach. That's a differentiated approach also in such a way that you get to check as well the readiness or the progress of every learner in your class. I think you just explore many facets of differentiation, and one way, as I've said, is creating groups, no chat groups for those who are not what you call this in the advanced stage category or those who are in the beginning stage. I think you can do it. You can still you can still do your share as course facilitator. Yeah, although we acknowledge the limitation of this session.
Thank you, Sir Ricky. We have questions pa po. Maybe we can entertain 3 more questions po. So dito po sa ating Facebook Live ang medyo madami pong questions. I'll just combine po yung iba. From Sir Mark Armenta, can we just combine visuals, notes, audio, video, and experiments to deal with all types of learners? And how are we going to help our audio learners if we are using modular distance learning? From Ma'am Sarah.
Okay. Say that again. The first one. The first.
Can we combine visuals, notes, audio, video, and experiments to deal with all types of learners?
I think that's very possible. You know what? You know what? In my approach now, particularly in the college, now since remember we also have the lab component. I'm particularly teaching biochemistry in the nursing and in the College of Education, chemistry courses. Obviously, for obvious reason, we cannot have the laboratory because we were prohibited to have the face-to-face delivery mode. So what we can do, what we did actually was by the use of virtual laboratory, virtual lab. Sometimes I have different videos being shared to them, and they find specific time to to view because I did not encourage them to do some lab activities in their respective households because you know the danger. They might not be familiar with the process and at the same time the chemicals may not be available. So what we did to address that concern now is through video virtual laboratory. There are some applications which you could probably use if you want to do the laboratory because there are apps wherein you can adjust, like for example concentration. You increase the concentration, what will be the effect on this variable, etc., etc. There are so many, sir.
Ito sir, last two questions kasi we are na po of time. From Ma'am Sarah, how to help audio learners, Sir Ricky, if we are using modular distance learning?
I see. Okay. So the audio learners, well, in that case, since that learner opted for a modular approach, I do not know what is contained in the modular approach. Are the, in the modules, I mean, probably in the module, no, in order to enhance also or to address also this type of learners, what you can do is in the module, as part of your activity there, you will provide link where they could probably access and listen to certain videos. That's what I did also in some of the lab activities that I had. I simply gave them the activity sheets with the link so that they could listen and not just listen, they could watch the video as well. I think that will work.
Yes, thank you, Sir Ricky. And last question po from Ma'am Micah Andres. How can we assure that our learners are learning something because cheating is rampant?
Yes, yes, exactly. I agree. I really agree with that. No, you know what? Academic integrity is being is at stake right now. First thing, do we know really that the students are the ones answering our modules? Oh, I mean, there are so many ways, no, that this type of delivery is being. I mean, we cannot really be sure about the academic integrity as far as the modular approach is concerned, because I know for a fact there are some parents who are seeking tutors to answer the module. But also, I don't take it negatively in such a way that the tutors are there also to probably take the role of the teachers. But if they answer it on behalf of the students, that's another thing. I think you really have to coordinate well. You should coordinate well with the parents that as much as possible, or please let the students answer the module. Let them answer for themselves.
Thank you for that, Sir Ricky. Sir, last na po, may question po si Sir Jade. Ano pong virtual lab ang gamit niyo daw po sa chemistry?
I have the I have the link because it was shared to us by our by the one in charge in our laboratory. So I forgot lang the sir, the link or the FET is one. Ang FET has a lot of lab. Are you familiar with FET simulations? But we also we're doing another thing. We're having specialized to a certain topic in chemistry. FET simulation is good. That's one of the options. But in our case, we're doing also other lab, other virtual lab apps.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Of course, you have to choose the one which is free, no? Because some virtual lab apps charges, no? They are for sale. But I think FET is very good and it is for free, right? Those of you who are using the FET simulation, particularly sa physics, that's very good, no? And chemistry, they have also.
Ito po, sir, ang ganda po ng comment ni Sir Danny Padilla from DepEd ni Maropa. We are developing worksheets focusing on differentiated activities and for learners who are lagging behind mathematics.
Very good.
Yun po. Hi, Sir Danny. Sir Danny is also a star trainer. So, ayun.
That's very good, sir, because that's one way of addressing that is already differentiated instruction in itself. By coming up with your bridging program is also an approach to differentiated instruction, and doing worksheets for those people or for those learners who lag behind. Yes, that is a very that's the very essence of differentiated instruction, because you cannot ask those type of learners to solve more complex problems if they have not yet fully understood the prerequisite skills in that particular problem solving. Thank you, sir, for that.
Thank you so much, Sir Ricky, and thank you sa atin pong participants for your active participation. So, meron po kaming naka-line up pa po na webinars for the rest of the year. So, katulad po nung sinasabi kanina about ICT and inequality, meron din po tayo niyan. Just watch out po for our Facebook page kasi doon po kami mag-a-announce. So, we'll be having webinars po monthly. So, thank you so much po, and we hope na marami po kayong napulot ngayong araw na to, Sir Ricky, from Sir Ricky. So, yun po, katag po na sinabi ko kanina, watch out po sa aming mga webinars. So, every month we will be conducting po. So, thank you so much and stay safe po sa ating lahat.